Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. Fallout New Vegas is a game I've wanted to make a video about since I started my channel. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm really excited to tell you why. Although it's one of my favorite games, I hadn't played it in several years, and I thought what better time to come back and play through all of it again for its 15-year anniversary. In today's video, you're going to see portions of multiple playthroughs I did for the making of this video, and hear about why I believe Fallout New Vegas is a masterpiece, although it wasn't set up to be. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Bethesda Softworks, Fallout New Vegas was released on October 19th, 2010. Just a few years prior, Bethesda had acquired the Fallout IP and developed Fallout 3 themselves. After the smash hit that was Fallout 3, Bethesda wanted to make another Fallout game that wouldn't take several more years after another Elder Scrolls game. But what studio could take on the mantle of carrying a fresh or recently acquired IP into its sequel? How about Obsidian Entertainment, who had just done that with a little game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2? For those of you more youthful viewers, let Unc tell you, that game is incredible. Obsidian also happened to have several ex-employees from Black Isle Studios, the team that made Fallout 1 and 2. Okay, so we've got a perfect studio to make this game. Of course it was destined to succeed. Well, Obsidian only had 18 months to make this game. Although they could use existing assets from Fallout 3, they were tasked with creating an entirely new world, story, and factions. 18 months. On top of all of that, Obsidian could not alter the engine Bethesda had made, which was buggy and difficult to work with. However, Bethesda spiced up the deal. If New Vegas could get a Metacritic score of 85, Obsidian and its employees would get a bonus payout. They got an 84. Now ain't that a kick in the head? Now, to be perfectly fair, Fallout New Vegas on launch had a lot of difficulties. It was buggy, especially for PS3 users. Save files would get corrupted, NPCs' pathing would get messed up with characters falling through the ground or walking through walls, and frequent crashes. To this day, both Fallout 3 and New Vegas have a hard time on modern hardware unless you use mods. Speaking of mods, I played on PC with several game stability mods and a few extra texture mods. Trust me, I wrestled with the idea of playing this game as purely as possible, but I didn't want to suffer through frequent crashes. This video is not going to be a review of any mods, and I'll focus on the mechanics, setting, and story. I also think it's important to say that I will be comparing this to Fallout 3, as we're in the Bethesda era of Fallout games, and those games use the same engine. I may mention Fallout 1 and 2, but in the case of comparing them as video games, it's harder to do given their vast differences in style and parent company. Fallout New Vegas takes place in the Mojave Wasteland in the year 2281, 204 years after the Great Nuclear War in 2077, which sent the world into its post-apocalyptic setting. The events in New Vegas are 120 years after the events of the original Fallout and only 4 years after the events of Fallout 3. The Mojave is an area consisting of southern Nevada, eastern California, and northern Arizona, a stark contrast to Fallout 3 with its ruined East Coast capital Wasteland. Now we're in a big, bright desert. The crown jewel of the area is the namesake city of New Vegas. It was largely protected during the world-ending nuclear war of 2077 by its technocrat leader, who I'll talk about later. But this created a unique area within the Fallout setting where you have ruins and dilapidation, but otherwise a city that can be salvaged. New Vegas is of course Fallout's version of Las Vegas. Back in 2010, I actually wasn't crazy about the setting of Las Vegas. I didn't dislike it, I just never got into the things it emphasized. At that time, I had never been to the desert, I didn't grow up enjoying cowboy westerns, and I had never gambled. But in the 15 years since, that has all changed. I absolutely love the desert now. Seeing all the wildlife and contrasting it to the environment of the one I grew up in Western Washington State. I came to love older western movies, or even movies based on Las Vegas. Like one of my favorite movies of all time, Casino, with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. And while I've only done it a few times, I like going to casinos. It's nice grabbing a drink and playing some games or watching a performance. New Vegas has a culture to itself, being inspired by the 60s and 70s era of the city when the mob ruled it. The Mojave has several factions vying for it and the Strip. Caesar's Legion, a brutally powerful faction that swallowed up dozens of tribes and cosplays as Romans. The New California Republic, a faction resembling a democracy that has become stretched thin, bloated with bureaucracy and corruption. There are several other factions too, and all of them are awaiting a coming second battle of Hoover Dam. A battle that will either let open the floodgates of Roman conquest of the Mojave, keep them out to give victory to the NCR, or a few other possibilities. Amongst all that geopolitics is us, a courier with Mojave Express. On our way to deliver a very important package for a very important customer, we're ambushed by a slick mobster named Benny and his jet-addicted thugs from the Great Khans. Benny knows the importance of what we're carrying, a platinum chip. He decides to take it for himself and finish us off to leave no witnesses.
The game was rigged from the start.
During the night, a mysterious robot named Victor will dig us out of our shallow grave, and a kind soul named Doc Mitchell in the town of Goodsprings will nurse us back to health. After getting back on our feet, we select our stats and skills, but you also get to choose 2 traits. What I love about traits are they are like personality quirks or oddities of your character. They don't just give you some kind of benefit, they also give you a drawback. Built to Destroy will give all weapons a higher chance to critical, but the weapon condition decays faster, meaning you'll have to repair it more or use different weapons. Heavy-handed gives you more overall melee damage, but you do less critical damage. I'll talk about perks in a second, but with perks it takes a little while to develop your character in a unique build. You have to gain several levels to really get a niche for your character. With traits, you immediately start to diversify your character, with certain benefits or restrictions that will make you play the game differently before you've even started playing. The only trait that I wish had a special rule was Wild Wasteland. This one doesn't really affect you on a personal character level, but will spawn bizarre and silly elements to the game. Anything from wacky movie references to crazy encounters with NPCs. This feels more like a game setting than it does a character trait, and it's a bummer you can't take 2 traits as well as this. As far as perks go, New Vegas added 72 new perks with only 16 being reused from Fallout 3, bringing the total perks in the base game from 58 to 88. There's Hunter giving a 75 damage bonus to mutated animals, or Cowboy giving you more damage with lever action, revolvers, and knife weapons. But to get to those perks, you need several points in Survival, a whole new skill that focuses on creating both food and items to survive in the Wasteland. You also only get a perk every 2 levels rather than every level like in Fallout 3. On one hand, I'm disappointed because I believe the quality and role-playing aspects of the perks in New Vegas are great and I want to use as many as I can. On the other hand, this is for balancing, to make sure you don't overwhelm the game world. I will also say, after around level 30, which is the base game's level cap, that is raised to level 50 with all the DLCs included, you'll have all the perks you'd want for a specific build. In fact, you'll have enough time left before level 50 to just do a secondary build if you wanted to. I know this is a niche problem I suffer from, but there are so many perks and choices in this game that it actually makes it difficult to stick to one character. For this video, I played about 5 characters before finally sticking to one. That final build focused heavily on guns, sneaking, and survival. I basically did the generic cowboy build. Before you leave Doc Mitchell's house, there's also hardcore mode. With hardcore mode, you have to eat, drink, and sleep or risk dying. Stimpaks heal over time, and you can't mend broken limbs with them. Radaway only removes radiation over time, and ammunition has weight. Okay, full transparency. I've never played hardcore mode. I know I should try it eventually, but I'm such a little hoarder that I don't want to manage my ammunition or sleep when I'm having fun. I think I will try it for a video eventually because all jokes aside, I actually usually like realistic gameplay like that. I mean, I love Kenshi, but for some reason I always shy away from it in New Vegas. And just like that, you're free to go. Go wherever and do whatever you want. While you could also do this in Fallout 3, one of the issues I had with that game was that your dad went missing and Vault Security was trying to kill you. If you're anything like me, that type of story feels restrictive in the sense that I feel like I should be looking for my dad the whole time. It would be a nagging feeling anytime I did anything outside of looking for my dad. After all, it's a role-playing game. The story is there for a reason, and I think it's normal to be concerned about your dad's well-being given the circumstances at the vault. In New Vegas, there's none of that. Sure, you got shot in the head. But if you, the real person, doesn't really care, then your character doesn't care. If you do care about that and you want revenge, start hunting Benny down. If you want to go off in a random direction and explore, do it. There is of course a story to New Vegas, but it's not demanding to be addressed immediately. You'll hear about Caesar's Legion poking and prodding the NCR. And you'll hear about the NCR being stretched thin, how the fiends are harassing parts of the Vegas outskirts. But there isn't anything in the game that is shoving urgency down your throat. You are given total freedom to interact with different communities or explore the Mojave. I don't know if I'm emphasizing how important that is, but that type of design is such a huge weight off the shoulders of a gamer like me. I don't hate Fallout 3 or anything, but it's not a perfect game. That game's story was one of the things that made it difficult to go off in any direction and explore, knowing that someone out there was depending on me to save them. I do want these games to eventually have a ramping up of the story and have some added level of urgency. But in an open world RPG that leans in on exploration, I just want it to be timed in a sensible way. New Vegas does that beautifully. Goodsprings will act as a player's tutorial area. And again, it's entirely optional. Sunny Smiles is someone Doc Mitchell recommends who will show you the ropes of how to play the game. She'll teach you how to shoot. You know, really shooting where you aim down the sight instead of an awkward slight zoom like they had in Fallout 3. I don't mean to be dramatic, but I want to cry. It's so beautiful. Actually being able to sight into a weapon and fire, and the game taking partial inspiration from cowboy culture and having a song called Big Iron is a dream come true. Sunny will also show you how to sneak up on enemies, and even a brief tutorial on crafting items at campfires to utilize the new survival skill. But if you already know all of this, you can also just skip the tutorial and do whatever the hell you want. Near the general goods store is a few benches. A bench for crafting items using various different skills like explosives and medicine. There were workbenches in Fallout 3, but they weren't nearly as robust. Then there's a reloading bench which allows you to recycle or craft different ammo types for your weapons. You can also now add weapon modifications to your weapons from the Pip-Boy. Extended magazines, scopes, weight reduction, and more. Most of the time there are only singular upgrades. For example, the 9mm has a scope, extended magazine, and a suppressor that you can add. But there's not several different types of scopes for the gun. So it's not really about customization, but upgrading your weapons over time. Either way, it's still good for gameplay, because your early game weapons can grow with you as you play to keep their value for a fight. In New Vegas, there are different ammunition types like hollow point rounds that increase damage or incendiary rounds that cause fire effects. Ghost Town Gunfight is one of the first side missions you may encounter in Goodsprings after the tutorial. A man named Joe Cobb from the Powder Gangers will show up. A bunch of escaped NCR convicts with a near unlimited supply of dynamite are threatening to take over Goodsprings if they don't hand over a traitor named Ringo. You can help the town of Goodsprings protect Ringo and repel the Powder Gangers, help the gang take over the town, or just ignore the whole thing. When you find Ringo, he will teach you how to play Caravan, a card game played by and based on traders in the Mojave. As a card game enjoyer, I had actually not learned the game prior to the recent playthroughs, but I was determined to learn it this time. I don't want to get too bogged down in the rules and confuse anyone, so I'll give you a very brief description of the game that won't cover everything. You use traditional playing cards and compete with your opponent to win 3 contracts on the board. You have to score between 21 and 26 to beat your opponent, and you each race to get all 3 of the contracts. The number value cards are their stated value, and the other cards act with different effects. For example, jacks are a type of removal card that will remove cards from your opponent's stack. Caravan is super easy to play once you understand the rules, and it's fun for a time, but it does get boring after about 10 games. I figured out you could just make a deck of 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s with a few jacks and kings, and that was enough to win. You can collect more Caravan cards throughout the game, and that part was fun, but it's just art changes to the same cards you already have. Depending on what you do with Ringo, it will heavily affect your reputation. Reputation is very important in New Vegas. Since it's a game that relies heavily on various factions, reputation is how you're balancing your relationships with them. If you kill Powder Gangers, they end up hating you and attacking you on sight. If you do good things for the NCR, they'll offer benefits in later events of the game, like giving you a radio to call in reinforcements. Working with one faction will make you an enemy of another. There are means to restore your reputation with a given faction, but they are limited. The Mojave is technically smaller than Fallout 3's capital Wasteland as far as measurements go. It's about 2/3 the size of it, in fact. But it uses that space so well. The topography, settlements, and enemies are wide-ranging. You of course have the desert areas with wind and tumbleweeds, occupied by vicious ants, rad scorpions, or even night stalkers, which are a hybrid of coyotes and rattlesnakes. Okay, who the hell even thinks of this stuff? Because it may be badass, but it also terrifies me. Then Jacobstown is high up in the mountains where you'll see green grass and trees, even snow. It's populated by super mutants and their Nightkin variant, which are crazed by their usage of stealth boys. Lake Mead is this huge body of water like an oasis amongst the desert. Small settlements like Prim dot the landscape. Prim is home to a huge resort casino sporting a roller coaster. Prim's roller coaster and Novak's giant T-Rex are just a few examples of how many notable landmarks there are all over this map. Then there is of course the city of New Vegas itself. You can see the Lucky 38's casino tower from any high point in the map. The New Vegas Strip is lined with a handful of casinos where you can play slots, blackjack, or roulette. Each casino has a different crime family controlling it, and you even get kicked out of the casino if you're winning too much, just like in real life. The New Vegas Strip has strict access requirements. You can only enter if you have a lot of caps or a diplomatic entry like with the NCR. Can't be having poor people wander around everywhere. I don't know if it's just me, but the Strip has a strange type of cozy vibe to it. You know, just outside the walls are crazy cosplayers, deathclaws, and methed out bikers trying to kill everything. But within the Strip, everything is safe. A safe place to blow all of your money or make a ton of it. I love the anticipation and build up to get there though. Everyone talks about the city or how they're going to spend most of their caps on it. Just outside the city, near the old highways, you see huge billboards showing what kind of classy establishments await. But there is a really good contrast to New Vegas itself, and it's right outside the city. Before you walk in, you have to go through Freeside, a slum within the city's walls. Freeside is a total dump. There's drug addicts all over the place, a casino that has zero class, prostitutes, and children chasing rats for food. Freeside has a gang called the Kings, a whole gang that took over an Elvis impersonation school and made it their colors. The Kings are all about supporting the actual citizens of New Vegas, not the NCR normies that got bussed in by the bear. The Kings will play a pivotal role for any faction who wants their influence or at least their cooperation. New Vegas is technically accessible as soon as you start the game in Goodsprings, but the game design makes it difficult. A mix of horrifying deathclaws and cazadors make the direct passage to New Vegas extremely difficult. This was an intentional design choice, as Obsidian wanted you to follow the trail of Benny and his Great Khan bodyguards. But they still made it technically possible for you to circumvent all of that. Traveling the Wasteland can be lonely. Luckily, New Vegas has an extremely satisfying cast of companions. There is Eddie, or Edie depending on how you want to pronounce it, an Eyebot wired for reconnaissance. Rex, New Vegas's answer to Dogmeat, the friendly cyborg dog that becomes unfriendly if you wear hats. Arcade Ganon, a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse specialized in healing. Craig Boone, a retired NCR sniper with a grudge against Caesar's Legion. Lily Bowen, a Nightkin super mutant who used to be in the Master's army. I love her. She talks like her grandma because she used to be one before the super mutant army threw her in a vat of FEV. Raoul, a ghoul mechanic and former gunslinger. Cass, a former Caravan merchant that's fallen on hard times and drinks away her problems. And Veronica, a Brotherhood of Steel scribe, yes they exist in this game, that is unhappy with the way the Brotherhood's Mojave chapter is being ran and decides to wander the waste seeking knowledge on how to run it better. Both Eddie and Rex count as non-human followers, so you can have them in addition to another human follower. I don't know if Lily and Rual are humans at this point anymore, but you get the idea. The companions in this game are much more fleshed out than in Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, they kind of just follow you around, don't really talk about much, and they get killed really easily. In New Vegas, they can't die in normal mode, however they can in hardcore. Now each companion will give you an entire perk when they're in your party. There is now a companion wheel to interact with them too. You can discuss their tactics, tell them to wait, follow, or carry something, and have a conversation with them. When you talk to them, they will tell you all about their thoughts on the current mission and about themselves. Over time, you're building a relationship with them. And they have their very own quest they'll bring to you that usually winds up in resolving the issue they have, but also upgrading themselves or a perk they've been giving to you. The companion system in New Vegas is so good that Bethesda themselves would inherit the same structure for their next game. New Vegas has some of my favorite and memorable missions of any game. Near Novak is a rocket facility occupied by ghouls trying to leave Earth because they don't feel welcome by society. An NPC in Novak says they're going to the moon, but they need the help of the courier to clear out the launching area from the Nightkin super mutants that infest it. That's because the super mutants are blocking the area where the rockets are. They're led by Jason Bright, a charismatic ghoul glowing with radiation. He has employed a friend named Chris Haversom, who is a normal human scientist but identifies as a ghoul and will even talk like one.
God, but are you ugly. Get upstairs and talk to Jason before I throw up just from looking at you.
Come on guys, it's 2028, don't be bigots. But Jason knows that Chris, being a human, will die in space due to radiation and tells the player to convince Chris that he needs to stay. Chris will stay and either begrudgingly help you lift off the rockets, or will plot with you to sabotage the launch and watch them die as revenge for not taking him with them. For the genius scientist Chris is, his desire to be a ghoul outweighs his own well-being. Way up in the northeast are the Boomers, and they're a bit difficult to get to because they pummel anyone who gets near their airfield with artillery. Once you impress them with your artillery dodging skills, you can help them solve their isolationist issues. The Boomers are formerly vault dwellers from Vault 34. Like all vaults, there was a catch to its supposed safety from atomic fire. This vault was stocked with an overabundance of firearms in its armory. Over the years, the inhabitants demanded more access to things that went boom, but the overseer greedily said no. So a group of them banded together and forced their way out of the vault and occupied the nearby Nellis Air Force Base. They took on the base's uniforms of former pilots and even found virtual reality simulators to learn how to fly planes too. The coolest part about the Boomers lore is seeing what happened to the ones that left, but also being able to go back to Vault 34 itself and seeing its downfall. There are tons of side quests like these with this much or more dialogue and choices. Choice is something Obsidian must have had at the top of their whiteboard when they were outlining this game. Player choice will influence not only the player's small-scale interactions, but also entire factions. Before speaking about other factions individually, it's important to speak about what major factions are vying for. Clearly they all want the Mojave and New Vegas for themselves, but there is a singular location they need to do that: Hoover Dam. Opened in 1936, Hoover Dam is a pre-war dam in the Black Canyon of the Colorado River on the border between Nevada and Arizona. Although not fully operational, if its secrets can be unlocked, Hoover Dam could power all of the Mojave and much more beyond it. But it's not just about hydroelectric power, it also acts as a fortified bridge into the Mojave. For any feasible invasion of the Mojave, you'd need this type of structure to cross the Colorado River. When the game begins, it's already been 4 years since the first battle of Hoover Dam, where Caesar's Legion had tried to take it. The NCR had held the dam, but it did a tactical retreat all the way back to Boulder City, where they pre-staged an explosive trap for the Legion. Once the Legion entered the city, the NCR blew it to hell. Although this also killed NCR Rangers in the process, the first battle had been won by the NCR. You're thrown into the game during a status quo leading up to the second battle of Hoover Dam. The decisions made in game for whatever faction will influence the factions during the battle and even who will win the battle. The New California Republic, founded in New California in the year 2189, is modeled after an old world democracy akin to the early 1940s American government. They entered the Mojave to take advantage of Hoover Dam, which could supply electricity to the growing republic. But by this time in the Fallout world, the NCR has been going through hard times. It's bloated with bureaucracy, corruption, and stretched way too thin. What started off as a desire to control the dam has turned into them occupying several areas of the Mojave. Now they have to contend with all sorts of factions like the Great Khans, a tribe that is a mix of Mongolians and methed out biker gangs. Then there's the Fiends, who are just animals really, hopped up on drugs and terrorizing areas surrounding Vegas. Caesar's Legion, or Caesar's Legion as it's known by its members. Modeled after a Roman society to include rigid military discipline and slaves, they've swallowed up 86 other tribes across America's Great Plain. Its leader, Caesar, chose Rome as a template because he felt it better matched the current circumstances of the Wasteland, rather than the NCR, which tried to emulate itself after a failed pre-war America. When Caesar's Legion envelops a tribe, they scrape off the tattoos and break up their families to force mixed breeding and rid them of old tribal loyalties. The Legion also outlaws dangerous chems and alcohol. It's even said that regions under their control see much safer roads for traders. But make no mistake, they are a brutal society. Women are not equal to men here. They have slaves. And in a likely first encounter with the Legion, you'll see places like Nipton, a town they brutally sack. Playing a twisted game, the Legion attacks Nipton and does a raffle to see who will survive. The winner gets to run away free. For most of the losers, well, they go out in a brutal way. Nipton is full of crucified people, including its inhabitants, powder gangers, and NCR. This brutal display was meant to send a message. The Legion sees Nipton as all the corrupt things it wants to abolish. You know, it wasn't until my more recent playthroughs that I really saw the complications with the Legion. I used to think they were just over-the-top evil cosplayers who I couldn't fathom siding with in the game. But upon replaying and writing notes for the video, I realized it's much more complicated than I thought. They do hate women and have slaves, sure, but they also hate drugs and alcohol. They bring brutal civilization, but civilization nonetheless. And you'll find several non-Legion traders in the game who will say how much safer Legion territory is compared to NCR territory. The final major faction is Mr. House and his Securitrons. Robert Edwin House is the technocrat ruler of New Vegas. Prior to the Great War, he was founder and CEO of Robco Industries. You'll see traces of this company all over the Fallout universe as they were at the forefront of computer and robotics technology. Its unified operating system was used by nearly all terminals in the Fallout universe. Robco was like if Ford, Tesla, and Microsoft mixed into one company. Prior to the war starting, Mr. House had become infatuated with Las Vegas and started buying up property on the Strip to create the beautiful Lucky 38, a striking tower that dominates the Strip. As someone born in Seattle, it also reminds me of the Space Needle, so I think it's cool. And as a history fan, Mr. House himself is partly based on Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was also a reclusive millionaire who came to love Las Vegas. When the war finally started, it was Mr. House who actually saved the city. He had concluded that the war was inevitable and that he needed to protect his beloved city. He used many of his technologies to shoot down incoming nukes during the war. Ever since then, he's used his own technology to remain alive the whole time. Mr. House has largely remained dormant within the Lucky 38 with the Securitrons keeping guard. It wasn't until the NCR came poking around the Mojave that Mr. House awoke from his slumber and rushed to Hoover Dam in order to use it as a bargaining chip with the NCR. The two factions concluded a deal where Mr. House welcomed the NCR into the Mojave, but with a few restrictions. Mr. House got 5% of the energy Hoover Dam generated, which was plenty for the Strip. NCR troops could not be armed on the Strip and could not be restricted from spending money on the Strip. While this may seem like a worthwhile sacrifice for the NCR to get into the Mojave, the deal really benefited Mr. House more. He got an entire army to defend the surrounding areas that he didn't have to pay for. And that same army was spending its caps and blood to remain in the Mojave. Mr. House was literally and figuratively bleeding them slowly. But in order to really cash in, he needed a very important package delivered that would tip the scales in his favor. That's where we come in. We had been hired to transport a platinum chip to Mr. House. The chip was basically like a thumb drive with powerful new software for his operating system and Securitrons that would increase their efficiency by 235%. So that's the politics of this game, and I absolutely love it. So much of what you do will change the trajectory of a settlement or a faction or the entire Mojave. And in my opinion, there's not a clear-cut solution on what faction to choose. At first, you might think it's the NCR. They'll bring democracy and its army to protect newly absorbed Mojave citizens. But is that what's best? It's already experiencing problems of its own that I suspect it's trying to mask by expanding. It seems like they want the power and wealth of the Mojave because they think it'll solve its issues on the home front. Even if you help the NCR win, you aren't left with the impression that suddenly all of their problems are solved. Caesar's Legion is a horribly brutal regime with no democracy in sight. They don't like women and have literal slaves. But as far as stability goes, it actually seems like they do at least offer that. However, throughout the game, you'll meet different NPC characters who will predict that once Caesar dies, so will his legion. It will devolve back into tribal squabbles and fracture, leaving the Mojave probably worse off after that collapse. Finally, you can work for Mr. House. He loves New Vegas and believes it can be the epicenter of a true American revival. He'll even talk about the logistics of the highways and its perfect location to link east and west. I love micro talk like this, by the way. So many characters in the world will talk about realistic logistical and government issues that I often ponder myself, but some games never really acknowledge. House will even insist he does not plan on being a dictator. He sees himself more as an autocrat. He only cares about New Vegas and doesn't really care about what happens outside of it. Basically, the rest of the Mojave will have to fend for themselves and shouldn't expect him to come and save them. However, that is a bit of a lie because he also demands that the Courier destroy the Brotherhood of Steel chapter in the Mojave. This chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel is having a bit of tension during the events of the game. Unlike the heretics of Fallout 3, this branch of the Brotherhood sticks to the old ways, hoarding technology and remaining isolationist, and Mr. House has an issue with that. He wants to be the only technocrat in the region, and they've been vying for the same assets he does if left to their own devices. Whenever I think I want to work for Mr. House, this is always the crossroads I come to. It feels bad just going in there and destroying them, and characters like Veronica will abandon you for obvious reasons if you do so. But you can also bet on yourself. When you finally get to New Vegas, you can speak to Mr. House, who will tell you exactly where Benny is. Benny is a chairman at the Tops Casino. You can choose to kill Benny on the Tops floor, back up in his room, or try to work with him, but he will betray you, shocker, and be captured by Caesar's Legion. The important thing is what else Benny is hiding. He hacked a Securitron named Yes Man. Yes Man knows all the ins and outs of Mr. House's operating system and what the Platinum Chip does. Through Yes Man, you could take control of all Mr. House's assets for yourself, even getting to kill Mr. House. I love the moment when you meet Mr. House because it's a reverse reveal that Fallout 3 did. In Fallout 3, it's a reveal that John Henry Eden, the leader of the Enclave, was actually a computer. In New Vegas, Mr. House is just this screen, and some may suspect that's all he is. Then it turns out he's still alive, just held in a chamber. But when you bet on yourself, you take New Vegas for yourself. Where would that leave the Mojave when you die? I guess you could headcanon that you get his stasis chamber working for yourself, or you have a succession plan. I've done the NCR and Mr. House paths, but I've never done a Caesar's Legion path to this very day, because it's hard to reconcile how they will bring civilization. But even the NCR and House paths feel sour, and I think that's good. If there was a clear-cut good ending, I think it wouldn't be a good representation of what this game is. Fallout 3 had a karma system that was already barely noticeable, and I'm shocked that it's actually still in New Vegas because it's even more relevant than before. The thing that matters in New Vegas is reputation, not good or bad karma. Reputation is less about doing objectively good things and more about doing things a particular faction likes. So if there was objectively good or bad endings and side quests, I think that would have contradicted its own design. For my main playthrough of this video, I ended up siding with the NCR. I justified it by figuring that the Mojave would have stability and protection for places like Prim and Nipton. I did several optional missions to help expand their influence but also aid the people of the Mojave through the NCR's benefits. But of course, in the back of my mind, I knew that the issues the NCR was suffering from weren't magically gone. Before I talk about the second battle of Hoover Dam and the conclusion of the game, I want to speak about the DLCs. I'm doing it that way because New Vegas is technically not open-ended after the conclusion of that battle. Once that battle is over, it asks you to reload a previous save. The DLCs are meant to be played and completed prior to that battle, so that's how I'm going to discuss them. Before leaving the Mojave, there is the Gunrunner's Arsenal, or GRA for short. This DLC was sold for $4 and increased the number of unique weapons, weapon mods, and ammunition types. Unique weapons like Bozar, Lil Devil, or Sleepy Time. There are plenty more uniques and modifications, but before modding was as prominent and streamlined as it is now, this was an official way to add what most mods could do. For the major DLCs, I'm going to go in the order I played them, not necessarily by their release. And I'll explain as I talk about it, but I actually think the order I did them in was slightly better than the order they were released in terms of story. Honest Hearts takes the courier to Utah, specifically the Zion National Park. Zion is home to several very primitive tribes. One of those tribes, the Whitelegs, were contacted by Caesar, and were given the opportunity to join his legion. But first they had to destroy New Canaan. This was a trader city further up the Colorado, led by a man named Joshua Graham. The Whitelegs did destroy that city, but they didn't kill who Caesar was really after, the Burned Man, or Joshua Graham. Formerly a legate in Caesar's legion and commander during the first battle of Hoover Dam, Joshua failed to take it. Caesar needed to make an example of him, so he tarred him, lit him on fire, and sent him into the Colorado. Ever since then, there's been rumors of that burned man throughout the Mojave and Utah. You'll even see graffiti throughout the main game that references him and served as a teaser for the DLC. After an introduction credit, you're in Zion. It's still arid like the Mojave, but now you're surrounded by big red rock canyons. When you get there, you're immediately ambushed with the party you came with. Everyone is slaughtered, but you're met by a friendly native named Follows Chalk, a member of a local tribe called the Dead Horses who wants to enlist you in helping the tribe. He acts as a companion and will give you the lay of the land. You'll eventually meet the burned man himself, Joshua Graham.
And you're a courier, no less. Not the one I was expecting, but I suppose he wouldn't have come with a caravan.
He's always been a badass character by design and by legend, since you've been hearing about him for a while by this point. He's just cool. He's always cleaning weapons and spitting Bible verses at you. There's also Joshua's friend Daniel, who is a missionary to a different tribe called the Sorrows. Daniel wishes to leave Zion entirely because he doesn't believe in shedding any more blood over it. Joshua wants to stay and defeat the Whitelegs. Honest Hearts setting focuses a lot on the survival skill. There will be plenty of animals to hunt and make items out of. You'll also encounter weapons like war clubs and tomahawks, really leaning into that Native American inspiration for the DLC. And speaking of that, the tribes have an interesting way of speaking.
You came from outside, didn't you? From the civilized lands. Wow. Joshua will want to hear about this.
As our modern culture has morphed and changed since 2011, when this DLC came out, this depiction of Native American-inspired tribes has sparked controversy in the years since. Some people online criticize the depiction of Native American tribes or having the plot being centered around white saviors, that being Joshua Graham and Daniel. The lead developer on New Vegas, Joshua Sawyer, has actually addressed this numerous times. I mean, look at everything he said about this very subject. In summary, Josh explains that the tribes themselves actually don't depict that much Native American influence and that they were supposed to be multi-ethnic. A mix of natives, travelers, traders, campers from pre-war, and anyone who's wandered into Zion since. And as far as the white savior thing, apparently both Joshua and Daniel weren't supposed to be Caucasian, but due to development restrictions involving textures, that complicated things. So what is my opinion of it? I don't think Joshua Sawyer needs to constantly bend over backwards to defend this. I think context matters in any accusation of insensitivity to cultures. If you actually play the game, it's very easy to understand that these tribes are mixed of various ethnicities and cultures. The Fallout universe has also clearly established how human society has gone backwards thousands of years due to the world resetting war. So if a country with majority white people descends back down the ladder of human advancement into tribalism, the tribes are going to have a few white people. And as far as Joshua and Daniel being white saviors, it's not about them being white. All of the people within Zion who don't come from New Canaan behave in a tribalistic manner regardless of race. That's just how this pocket of humans have developed since the war. Joshua and Daniel come from different cultures, so when they enter Zion, they're bringing what they know of the places they came from. Now I will admit, I think the dialogue is cringy when tribals speak because they're talking in a style and cadence akin to Native American tribes from movies depicting them in the 1850s or something. But outside of that, I think the controversy is really overblown. Anyway, at one point in the DLC, you get to fight a flaming fucking bear, so can we all just get along? Throughout Zion, you can encounter one of the coolest characters that you'll never actually see alive in the DLC, the legend of Randall Clark. He was a former soldier in pre-war times who went to Zion after the bombs dropped. Even before the bombs dropped, he was a survivalist that took pride in his survival skills, often going out on camping trips to Salt Lake City by himself for days. This is all despite him having a wife and a young child. He was coming back from one of these trips when the bombs dropped. Randall knew his family had to be dead, so he went into Zion to survive. Over the years, he becomes a bit of a legend in Zion, but never reveals himself, eventually becoming a deity of sorts in his own right. Strewn throughout the area are small camping hideouts and terminals with entries from Randall explaining the preceding years about his time in the park. If you are not familiar with the other details, I really don't want to spoil it, and I think you should enjoy it for yourself. When you find his corpse, you also find an awesome survivalist rifle. It's a souped up version of the game's generic service rifle, and I turned it into my main gun for the remainder of the playthrough. The main quest ultimately makes you decide between Joshua and his tribe fighting off the Whitelegs or going with Daniel's plan to escape. This doesn't make either of them enemies of each other or anything, but your influence guides their strategy. I chose to leave Zion. That's because Joshua's argument isn't that convincing. This is not a criticism of his character at all. In fact, it's his complicated character that I like. Joshua has worn many caps. He used to be a missionary himself. Then he became a Legion general. Then a missionary again. Then a military leader again. He claims to be reformed and just seeking his peace, but when confronted with the opportunity to escape Zion, he wants to stay and fight, despite Daniel having a great argument for just leaving. I felt like Joshua didn't want to admit he still has a little Legion in him in regards to wanting to fight it out. I also get the suspicion that he knows Caesar's after him, and he wants Caesar to know that he lives on and defeated the tribe Caesar sent to kill him. Regardless of staying or leaving, you have to fight. The Whitelegs will attack either way. Once both tribes are safely out, you can blow the passage behind them. After the slideshow explaining your choices, you can return to the Mojave and get a sweet chest containing a bunch of unique items like Joshua Graham's armor and Daniel's hat. Overall, I really like Honest Hearts, and I think the build-up and rumors from the main game made it interesting to seek out Joshua Graham to see if he was really alive. Old World Blues starts by interacting with a fallen satellite back at the drive-in near Nipton. It transports you to the Big Empty. This is where the government gathered the best scientists in the country to push science even further ahead. In the years after the war, those scientists would inherit the Big Empty, and they now live in brain jars.
Be warned, intruder! You are in the presence of the mighty think tank of Big Mountain! The collective geniuses of... we...
This is the think tank. They're a hilarious bunch. The voice acting and dialogue of the think tank is funny as hell, and I like them going all back and forth with each other. Old World Blues totally flips some of the serious tones of the Mojave and other DLCs on its head. It's much more lighthearted and whimsical. No biblical references or tribal warfare here. The think tank needs the courier's help in taking down their rival, Dr. Mobius.
If it isn't my old colleagues, the mighty think tank of Big Mountain. Big fools, all of you.
Dr. Mobius is another crazy scientist battling with the think tank over the Big Empty. And I'm sure we're all eager to help them, only they've removed our brain. Yes, your brain has been surgically removed. Oh, and your spine and heart have also been taken. Luckily, they give you a handful of perks to compensate for this, like spineless. The think tank will also allude to someone that came before us. That's right, you'll find traces of both a character named Elijah and another named Ulysses. Throughout the Big Empty, you'll see traces of their symbols or camps. And this is what I meant earlier about the order I played the DLCs in actually working out in my favor. Another DLC called Dead Money actually came out before this one and focuses heavily on Elijah. But if you play Old World Blues first, it actually acts as sort of a prequel to Dead Money and drops numerous hints about him. Before exploring the Big Empty, you can get acquainted in your player home called The Sink. The Sink is like your hub for this DLC and can be accessed as a player home even after it. The Central Intelligence Unit is where you can buy, sell, and repair items. There is an auto dock that can give your player haircuts, a jukebox that can modify your emitter gun, a garden, a maniacal toaster bent on world domination, and a bunch of other stuff that can be upgraded.
Buddy, if my heating element were just a little bigger, you'd be on fire right now! On fire!
My favorite is Muggy, a tiny little Securitron that likes mugs. They programmed him to be obsessed with cleaning mugs, but unfortunately the brain jars don't really consume coffee anymore, which makes his job a bit redundant.
Do you know how many coffee cups giant robot brains and jars use on a daily basis? Not fucking many!
The big empty crater itself is full of wacky and zany things to see, and enemies from Dr. Mobius like the lobotomites and robo-scorpions. Or how about these terrifying bastards? Skeletons in spacesuits is a new fear I never thought I'd have. There are even frenzied Securitrons all the way out here, although I'm not sure how they procured them. They have these crazy zombie looking faces on their TV port to show how frenzied they really are. We aren't defenseless though. We have guns like the K9000 Cyberdog, which can be upgraded through various missions. This adorable weapon has a dog brain jar, so it will react like a dog with its little ears or when it sniffs out enemies. It will even yelp when you put it away. Or there's Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon, which is an absolute beast even without points in energy weapons. And of course there is the experimental MK2 stealth suit that can be upgraded throughout the DLC. It can even talk to you in a super sexy voice.
Who do you think is cuter, Dr. Klein or Dr. Boros?
It will comment on things like reminding you that your Pip-Boy light is on when you're trying to sneak or about the current task. It will also automatically heal you with stim packs when your health is low. The Big Empty is diverse in gameplay with a focus on science and energy weapons, separating itself from the other DLCs. But it's also surprisingly diverse in its locales. Despite being a big crater in the middle of nowhere, there are various experimental areas, like a whole makeshift town inside a warehouse and a cavern area with bright red crystals. After defeating a massive robo-scorpion, you can meet Dr. Mobius himself. He has your brain and only agrees to give it back if your brain wants to go back with you. It's a first or third or subconscious conversation with your own brain.
Well, well, look who finally dragged themselves in out of the Wasteland. And where have we been?
It decries our life choices and recounts all the silly predicaments we put it through, which is pretty hilarious. Our brain also informs us that Dr. Klein and the others of the think tank are likely to betray us, and we'll use both our brain and body to make the Mojave their playground. The fight with the think tank isn't too complicated. They even mention they've never had to be in a fight, which makes sense for big brain scientists. I really liked Old World Blues, and it was the one I was actually least excited to replay, to be honest. Usually I like the DLCs dealing in pre-war lore and traditional guns, but the humor, really cool weapons and enemies, and even a diverse range of locations and experiments made me really like it. And then there's the Sink, which is a great player home because you can still come back to the Big Empty anytime you want. Dead Money takes place in the Sierra Madre, a resort casino that had never officially been opened before the war started. After finding an abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker, foreshadowing, you fall into a trap and are transported to the resort. This is where you're met by Father Elijah, a man you probably heard about by this point if you dealt with the Brotherhood of Steel back in the Mojave, and there was hints of him back in Old World Blues. Elijah is the crazed and missing leader of the Brotherhood of Steel branch in the Mojave. He is using you as a pawn to help him commit a great heist. You have to assemble a team to perform a heist for him, and you really don't have a choice because you have an explosive collar attached to your neck. In order to assemble your team, you have to traverse the lower area of the Sierra Madre while also dealing with a toxic red cloud that hangs over the city. The lower city is occupied by ghost harvesters and can only be truly killed when you dismember their bodies. There are also bear and grenade traps all over the goddamn place. This entire neighborhood is a death trap, and if that wasn't enough, you have to take out these psionic emitters that will also kill you if you stay within their proximity too long. But once you find them and destroy them, you can proceed without losing your head. The mix of ghost harvesters and psionic emitters make for really tense gameplay. I found myself hugging the walls the whole time, trying to avoid both dangers, but it felt fun. Although my own character was equipped for sneaking, this is a whole different way to go about it. Rather than making sure I'm not identified by the enemy in a crouch stance so I can land a critical, I'm trying to dance around the proximity emitters while trying to find the source and avoid traps and enemies. You can use these vending machines to buy food and other supplies to sustain yourself too. There are also unique weapons here like the automatic rifle and hollow rifle. There are 3 members of the team you have to gather. First up is Dean Domino, aka the King of Swing. In the pre-war times, he was a lounge singer and a famous con artist. You can find posters advertising him throughout the Mojave too. Now he's a ghoul who's been trapped at the Sierra Madre ever since. Like Elijah, Dean has also become obsessed with the casino's treasure and has refused to leave ever since. He knows the area well and even leaves himself drop boxes with weapons and supplies. Next is Dog, and/or God, a super mutant with split personalities. Dog is the friendly and obedient side, and God is an asshole. Finally, there is Christine Royce, a mute former Brotherhood of Steel scribe and former partner of Veronica. Apparently the Brotherhood does not approve of such new age, same-sex relationships, so she's got a bone to pick against Elijah. After you assemble the team, you can get into the casino itself, but your team is immediately ambushed by the casino's automatic security and hauled off. The next phase of the DLC is either ignoring your team to get to the treasure or assembling them back up and doing it together. Dean will of course try to betray you, although it's possible to talk him out of it. In my case, I couldn't figure out how to make him stay loyal, so I had to finish him off. When you finally crack the safe and enter it, you're met by Father Elijah, who is willing to do an evil villain rant where you can learn more about his motives. Ultimately, Father Elijah wanted the Sierra Madre and its vault for its weapons, security, and a citadel, a place for which he could shape the Mojave in any way he chose. Namely the hologram technology which the Sierra Madre facility perfected and the Big Empty failed to do was another thing he wanted. Both the Sierra Madre and the Big Empty were massive independent facilities he sought to control, without the responsibility of leading real living beings with independent minds like the Brotherhood. He explains that after the battle for Helios 1, a vicious defeat for the Brotherhood, he had clarity in that failure and decided to wander for bigger pre-war projects. He wandered across the Mojave to include the DLC areas we explored, until he finally found the Sierra Madre. You can escape the vault of course, but it may be tricky to take all the riches with you. There are 37 gold bars in the vault and you can take 1 or 2 with you without being encumbered. But I found a guide online where you can successfully take all 37 and escape. Otherwise you'll need to fight Elijah to the death. If you end up successfully taking all the gold with you though, be warned that this may make things a tad redundant when you get back to the Mojave. It's enough money that you're going to need for absolutely nothing in the Mojave. Just sell 1 bar and you can repair most of your guns and armor, buy new ones, and all the ammo you could ever want. This will make the incentive to go off and collect items and caps lose its luster. Dead Money is an awesome DLC. I love the way it makes you play entirely different to any other part of the game. Interacting with Elijah is really cool because he's kind of like Joshua Graham and Ulysses, where you hear about them all throughout the game until you finally meet them. Lonesome Road, the final release DLC and one that should be played last. I'm immediately pissed because it didn't have one of those cool graphic slides like the other DLCs did, and I have a nagging OCD and really wanted that for the video. Lonesome Road takes place in the Divide. The Divide are the ruins of 2 pre-war towns, Hopeville and Ashton. Both were pre-planned towns meant to show off the American dream. It also sat right above an extensive American government nuclear facility. After the bombs dropped, the towns were mostly abandoned, but the Divide remained. This is where you'll get to finally speak to the other mysterious courier you've been hearing about throughout the main game and DLCs. Even way back in Prim, Johnson Nash speaks about this courier who conveniently declined to take a package you would pick up. This is the voice of Ulysses.
Heard tales of you walking the Mojave, giving the 2-headed bear strength, giving hollow men like Kimball, like Crocker, half the life Hanman had.
Although for now you're only communicating through your new Eddie companion. He is not a fan of the NCR and sees him as weak. Ulysses is not his birth name. He calls himself Ulysses after someone he's read about. He is a complicated character. Once part of the tribe called the Twisted Hares, it was swallowed up by Caesar's legion after the Twisted Hares had helped Caesar. Ulysses still stayed loyal to Caesar after this battle, but eventually wavered after the first battle of Hoover Dam when Joshua Graham turned into the Burned Man. He'll have a lot more to say to you throughout the DLC, but his goal is to get you to him for the big confrontation that's been long in the making. The build-up was done really well because most of the time is just a few lines of dialogue or a few painted symbols on places. From Prim to New Vegas, Honest Hearts, Dead Money, Old World Blues, you'll either hear about him or see his pre-war flag markings. The normal gameplay doesn't beat you over the head with these references, and if you're blasting through dialogue, you'll likely miss the small snippets of references to Ulysses. Before you can finally confront him though, you need to get through the ruins of the Divide. I know this is going to be a very bold claim, but this DLC has the best representation of a ruined area in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. The destruction looks awesome and realistic. I know it's all designed, but it doesn't feel designed like other depictions of ruins in the game. It truly feels like the bombs dropped just the day before and the rubble is so twisted and stacked up. Sometimes the road ahead will be blocked with rubble and you need to blow up leftover nukes to get to the next area. You'll find weapons like an arc welder and a nail gun or the red glare. The enemies that inhabit the Divide are former NCR and Legion combatants that end up fighting together to kill anything not of the Divide. Then you go underground and find these little bastards, tunnelers. The enemies in New Vegas as a whole just give me nightmares. Night Stalkers, skeleton space bandits, and now tunnelers. The tunnelers aren't just a localized threat, they can expand. They make Deathclaws look like bloatflies. He says that eventually these tunnelers will expand into the Mojave and consume everything if not dealt with. He predicts it won't take centuries, but a few years. After battling through the Divide, it's time for the final confrontation with Ulysses in an underground silo. I have to say, ever since Darth Vader made it cool, respiration devices on villains or anti-heroes is badass. He wants to use these remaining nuclear warheads to destroy pretty much anything that has been rebuilt since the war. That means the entire West Coast essentially. And he wants to do this because he sees the NCR as inheriting all the bad things from pre-war. And I gotta tell ya, I get it. This is the same good argument Caesar himself made. Is the Wasteland a good fit for a struggling democracy, or are the tribes a better fit? Ultimately, you can fight Ulysses, and after he's dead, you can choose to shut down the nuclear launch, send nukes at both the NCR and the Legion, or just one of them. If you end up actually striking the NCR or the Legion, you can actually go to the ground zero of where impact is made when you get back to the Mojave. In my case, I hit the cosplayers hard, so I was able to go to the dry wells where the Legion had been hit by the nuke. With Ulysses dead, the Lonesome Road is at its end. This had to be my favorite DLC because I love the Divide's ruins and the final confrontation with Ulysses. I won't pretend like I always knew what he was talking about, and maybe I had to look up on the wiki at times. But I understood most of what he was saying, and the final fight with the urgency of the nuclear volley being prepared was memorable. I don't think I 100%ed any of the DLCs, but I tried to do most of what each offered. What I liked about these DLCs as a group is how it ties themselves not only to the main game, but to the other DLCs. You could play them in any order, but I highly recommend Lonesome Road last to have that final built-up confrontation. With the DLCs completed, I went back to the Mojave for the second battle of Hoover Dam. This battle will play out wildly different depending on who you're supporting. NCR, Caesar's Legion, and an independent Vegas led by Mr. House or the Courier. As I've mentioned, I did an NCR run, so it was my job to help the defense of Hoover Dam. The optional side quests you do prior to this battle may also influence it. For example, if you help the boomers recover a bomber plane from Lake Mead, they'll come in for a run during the battle. After repelling the initial assault, you can take the fight to Caesar's camp. This is where you'll confront Legate Lanius. You can convince him to flee if you phrase it as a tactical retreat, but I actually wanted to fight him, so I pissed him off intentionally. He has a massive legendary sword that I somehow survived being hit by. I also knocked him down with one of my perks, so he just had to sit there and take punishment. After defeating Lanius, the battle is over. You'll be met by the faction you supported and under different circumstances based on your choices. Fallout New Vegas is a masterpiece, and I don't even know how that's possible given the 18-month window. I suspect it's the team that Obsidian had assembled. A roster of people who loved this series, and it absolutely bled through the final product. Does it have bugs and crashes? Yes. On PC, my experience was great with a few stability mods, and I can't really speak on how it runs on modern consoles. But this is one of those cases where I'm willing to accept some instability for the ability to play such a great game. I love the lore and attention to detail in this world. Small questions I have, like the logistics of trade between settlements or how water is supplied to the citizens of the Mojave, have answers. Is that absolutely necessary to the plot? No. But for my own immersion to this world, it's little things like that that add up and make it feel real. And like my curiosity is being rewarded. The power of choice is incredible in this game. A robust list of new perks and traits which make my character feel unique, and that I can replay and do interesting builds with. And those replays won't just be for character playstyles, but what my character does to influence the Mojave. Will I destroy the bear to welcome the bull? Or free it from both entirely? Folks, that's all I've got for Fallout New Vegas. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Thank you to my YouTube channel members, Quinn, Chris Redbeard, Brewham, Eugenia, Johnny C, and new member, Travis Lam. And to my patrons, Shio, Lyra, Eon Kane, Martain, Smudge, Brooks, Jonathan C, J-Rat, Andrew PH, and new member, Mamoxa. My Patreon is free. Check it out if you'd like to see what I'm up to behind the scenes. If you become a YouTube channel member or paid patron, I'll shout you out in my videos. Let me know if there are other Fallout games you'd like me to play for the channel or any other franchise you're into. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.